Hi, it's Cara and today we are filming my December wrap up. It's a few days late. I've been a bit busy and to be honest I've been kind of procrastinating. I don't really want to film it. I don't know, wrap ups take the longest time for me because obviously I read a lot, but I don't like doing a mid-month wrap up either. Like it just doesn't work in my brain. I want it all in one space, but it's just so exhausting to film, so I've been putting it off, but we're doing it today. Also yesterday the weather was terrible. I mentioned it in my vlog, but the lighting would have been atrocious. So today's lighting is passable. We're gonna roll with it. So I have here the stack of books that I read in the month of December. I did kind of slow down a lot in December. I got really busy both with work and just life stuff. And I just didn't get as much read as I would have liked novel wise, but I did make it up so that I still met my 31 and 31, which I've been doing all year, which I will let relax in the new year, hopefully. Who knows. I'm like, on one side I'm like I should just relax and read whatever, and on the other side I'm like, I was at 400. Could I hit 500? In which case I need to be at like 40 books a month. So we'll see how my mind ends up going at the end of January, I think. The plan obviously to get 500 would be to read a lot of short stories at the end of every month, but we'll see what happens. We'll see. I do have a lot of short stories I want to read, so that might end up happening, but we'll see. So I only have like 9 things here physically that I read. Some of which I DNF'd, but I did get to 31, so there are a lot of things that I have in my little notebook that I'll talk you through. And let's get started, I guess. So first off, we had a couple of 5-star reads. Oh, let me count that up actually. Let's see how many we got to all up. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 5-star reads. And 2 DNFs, I think, in the end. Yes, 2 DNFs. So 5 5-star reads, 2 DNFs. But the first 5-star read I read for the month was I Would Leave Me If I Could by Halsey. This is a poetry collection that really focuses on grief, sexual assault, femininity, body ownership, mental illness. If you've listened to Halsey's music, this is probably a familiar concept, though I loved that these poems weren't just like direct draws from music, they weren't lyrics. There are a couple of things that you could tell lyrics for songs, newer songs were like drawn from, but this is all poetry. It's a beautiful collection. It's not Instagram poetry in the slightest. It's proper formulated. I guess Instagram poetry is proper. Like I don't want to say like, I don't want to be poetry elitist, but I'm not the biggest fan of Instagram poetry and it's like short style. I much prefer these like longer stanza complex poems that I feel like you could reread and analyze and pull apart, and I definitely want to reread this collection at some point. I'd also love to listen to an audiobook if one exists. It is available in audiobook. I'd be really tempted to listen to an audiobook for this because it was beautiful. I loved it to pieces. Jessie bought me this version for Christmas, which I forgot to put in my haul. I got this for Christmas. I read it on ebook, and then Jessie bought it for me for Christmas, which I forgot all about. So it wasn't in my haul, but I did get this in December. And yeah, it was absolutely beautiful. I want Jessie to read it like ASAP. I loved it to pieces. I loved it. My next 5-star read was Bats of the Republic by Zachary Thomas Dodson. This is a mixed media story that's very time twisty, very weird. It's set in 2 time periods. One in the past when Texas is a republic, and we're following a guy who really wants to marry this girl, but she's above his station kind of, and he works for her dad, and he agrees to go on a mission to deliver a letter to someone, and if he does that he'll get her hand in marriage, but it's a very treacherous journey. And then we also follow in the future their descendants in a post-apocalyptic kind of environment, with a kind of like a Big Brother-esque environment where everyone's monitored all the time, and they use hand signals to communicate secret messages and things. Oh, here comes the puppy. Yeah, it was super interesting. It's very time twisty, bendy, hard to tell what's fiction and what's real. It's very confusing in that regard, but the actual prose is really straightforward, and I thought it was really well handled and did some really cool things, and I just had a great time with it. I left it being like, what the fuck, but I loved it. Next up, I listened to an audiobook called Nunshall Sleep by Ellie Marnie. This is a young adult thriller following a couple of teenagers. The main character, I can't remember her name, was a survivor of a serial killer who was kidnapping girls and killing them, and she escaped, but everyone else died in her escape. And she's now being hired by the FBI to go in and talk to young serial killers to try and like get information out of them for essentially the like BAU, like the behavioral analyst unit, like Criminal Minds. So they're really untrained, and they're getting sent in to talk to these juvenile offenders that are serial killers, and it's so unrealistic but also super fun, and I enjoyed my time reading it. I gave it 4 stars, though if you have any knowledge about criminal process and how that all functions, this probably will tick a few feathers like it ticked mine. There were some logic leaps that made no sense to me. That's fine. Not everything has to make sense all the time, and I probably have more knowledge. I did a forensics degree. I probably have more knowledge than the average reader in regards to the topics. After that, I read The Once and Future Witches by Alex E. Harrow. This is a story of 3 sisters who were kind of estranged, and then they come together again in a town, dealing with, it's kind of like an alternate history in a place called New Salem, with suffrage in the US, and how witchcraft plays into that. I didn't love this as much as I wanted. I just found the prose a bit draggy, and I struggled to connect with a lot of the characters. So overall, I ended up giving this 4 stars. It was good. It just wasn't great. Then once again, for the second time, I TNF'd Blood and Honey. I tried to listen to this on audiobook in December, and I still gave up. I got a lot further the second time, like maybe a third of the way in, but still the narrators didn't do a great job of the voices, unfortunately. So I went ahead and DNF'd this as well. After that, I read We Unleash the Merciless Storm by Taylor K. Mejia. This is the sequel to We Set the Dark on Fire, and I enjoyed this a lot. But I do think there were some choices made in the way this series was developed, this duology was developed, that didn't work great for me. So book 1 follows one character in the sapphic pairing, and book 2 close follows the other character. And for me, I felt like this second book got let down compared to the first book, because we came in knowing some things about this character, Carmen, but we didn't really understand how she thought because we'd never spent time in her head. And then suddenly it was assumed like we understood how she thought. Like I feel like I just didn't get enough character development from Carmen. So I think it would have been better if it was like a two POV from book 1, but what can you do? So it didn't work perfect for me, but I did really enjoy the wrap up of the plot. Was a bit convenient at times. Obviously book 1 was way better than book 2, but I did enjoy reading this. I enjoyed finishing off a duology, and I gave this 3 stars. Then I listened to another audiobook. This is another young adult thriller, and this is They Wish They Were Us by Jessica Goodman. It's a high school story about a group of kids that are really corrupt and have a cheating ring, and they perform really bad like hazing rituals to get into their group. And one of their team, I guess their group, had died a few years previous, and so we're kind of seeing the breakdown of the group as they're trying to figure out who killed her. They thought they knew who it was, but things are coming to light. I gave this 3 stars as well. I didn't love it. but it was interesting and it did keep me hooked the whole way through. Oops, sorry. So yeah, I did enjoy it, but I didn't love it, so 3 stars for that as well. Then I read The Alchemists of Loom by Elise Cover. This is the first in a fantasy series. I think it's a trilogy, following what's the main character's name? Ari. And she's in this world there's like people, like humans, but they're not called humans, they're called something else, I can't remember though. Chimera, who are humans with dragon organs that have been implanted, and then dragons, and they're like 2 races, and dragons have magic. And Ari is a chimera, but a perfect chimera. Normally people, if they have the magic implanted, their human bodies can't handle it and it freaks out and they like wither and die. But she's a chimera that's functional and she has magic, and it's a like slow burn romance between her and a dragon who's on the run trying to overthrow the Dragon King. Personally, I wish that this was a polyamorous love triangle, but at least a V between her best friend, assistant, co-worker, who I loved, Flora, I think her name was, and the dragon, Kvare. I would have loved all 3 of them to be together. None of them get together in this book, but like that's what I'm hoping for, but I don't know if it'll actually happen. But it's very slow burn. It's a fantasy, it's romantic, but it's very actiony too, very gory, and I had a good time reading this. I gave it 4 stars. Then I jumped over to a contemporary and read Far From the Tree by Robin Benway. This is about 3 siblings who were all adopted out to different families, and they're one ended up in foster care and the 2 girls were adopted out, and they're kind of reconnecting and rediscovering each other. It was really poignant and powerful, and really sweet. I gave it 4 stars. I had a good time. It was fun. Like sad fun. I should say I was trying to participate in a bunch of readathons this month. I was participating in the Clear Shit readathon hosted by Mouse and Art, and did terribly. I did terribly. I did alright, but I didn't finish anything. I didn't finish it. But to be fair, everybody died, so it turned out alright. And I was also meant to be participating in Not Safe for Workathon with Paige, and a bunch of other co-hosts, and I did terribly at that too, so I did terribly all around, but oh well. So then I read a couple of audiobooks. Well, I DNF'd one of them, but first off I started with The Curses by Law Eve. This is the sequel to The Graces. It was interesting. I think I liked the narration better in this one because we follow a different character to the first one. And I liked her better. She was more interesting. And unlike We Unleashed the Merciless Storm, the character development still worked, I think. And this is about a family of witches, and things go wrong for them. In the first one it was a new girl joining their coven. In this one following the aftermath of the first one, and it was really fun. I enjoyed it. I gave it 3 stars. Like, I don't think it's anything absolutely amazing, but it was enjoyable. Then I read or listened to The Original by Brandon Sanderson and Mary Robinette Kowal. This is an audio exclusive from Brandon Sanderson's new audiobook, only like written for audiobook collection, and I really enjoyed it. I gave it 4 stars. It's a short novella in a world where people can have clones, but also their whole experience is digitized. It's very much an episode of Black Mirror, and I thought it was handled really well, and I really enjoyed it, though it is like an episode of Black Mirror. I also tried to listen to The Truth Project by Dante Medema, and unfortunately this one I DNF'd. This is about a girl who has always felt like she was a misfit, and decides to do a project doing her DNA, like 23andMe, and discovers she's actually the product of an affair. A dad that she thought was her dad is not her real dad. Well, he's her real dad, not her biological dad. I couldn't deal with this. I don't know if it was the narration or just the way it was written. It's written in poetry, like written in verse, but it was so melodramatic to the point of not making sense. The main character, Cordelia, was so self-centered, and everything was about how badly it affected her, and she wasn't good at communicating, and she didn't really consider how like her things affected everybody else, and it was all about validating her sense of not fitting in. And I don't know, you can be a misfit and not be like, and still be genetically related to your family. Like, the two things are not connected. And she was just so melodramatic about it all the time, and it was like the worst thing that could happen to her, that she had two loving parents, but her mum at one point had an affair and then came back to the marriage. Like, clearly it was all sorted, they were good. Like, I understand it's traumatic, it's stressful, she's like 17, but it's just too much for me to handle, and I just couldn't deal with listening to it, so I DNF'd it. Then I read another 5-star read, and that is The City We Became by N.K. Jemisin. This is following on from The City Born Great, which is a short story in her How Long Till Black Future Month collection. And kind of part of that makes up the prologue to this, and this really expands on it. I really enjoyed this. I loved all the perspectives on the characters. I thought it was super clever. I will say, I don't think it's written for me in any way, shape or form. Like, I know it's not written for me. This is really a love story to New York, and I'm not familiar closely with the city. It's so obviously a big like city book. I don't even live in a major city. I live in like a second major city, which I feel like does not have the same like sense of city vibes as a major city. I can get everywhere in my city in 15 minutes. But still, I loved it. I loved it to pieces. I thought it was so well constructed. I do think people will struggle because the villain and magic system is very wishy-washy and intent-based rather than logic-based. But I loved it. I had a great time. 5-star. Then I listened to another audiobook. This is Freshwater by Akwaeke Emezi, and this is a literary kind of fiction following a girl. I think she's half Nigerian, half Iranian. I can't remember where. Oh, Sri Lankan maybe. And she's dealing with a lot of trauma. Her sister was in a car accident, or a pedestrian hit by a car. She always had a really strained, tenuous home life, and then she moved to America for college, and she developed like a multiple personality, like dissociative identity disorder, but it's all framed through the lens of the idea of that she had these gods inside her from the beginning that were trying to like get out. It was a really interesting way of portraying the story. I was absolutely fascinated. It's very harrowing, dark, and I just loved it. It was so beautifully presented. I listened to the audiobook, which is narrated by the author, and I just thought it was stunning. It was so beautiful. 5 stars. I also listened to a little picture book or early readers book called The Snow Dragon by Abby Elphinstone, and I really enjoyed this as well. I gave it 4 stars. It was just cute and fun, and I read it at the right time because I read it over Christmas, and it's about a little girl who lives in an orphanage and everyone else got adopted but she didn't, and she goes on a little adventure on a dragon. It was fun. I also read The Two Lost Mountains by Matthew Riley this month, but I don't have it on me because I left it with my mum for her to read and keep, because she collects them and I don't. This is like 6th book now, I think, in a action adventure mythology based like Indiana Jones-esque series. It's the Jack West series. It was originally a trilogy and now it's expanded out, and I really enjoyed this. I do love this series. It's just super fun and fast-paced. I do think that Matthew Riley can't scare me anymore. He's done too much to hurt my soul that I'm just numbed now. So a lot of the things that should have had emotional impact didn't quite hit so hard as they could have. I still was like, whoa, but I didn't take them seriously enough. Like, I've been burned too many times. But I did really enjoy this. It was a lot of setting up for the final book, but that's fine. Like, it still was fast-paced and actiony, and I gave it 4 stars. I also listened to A Sky Beyond the Storm by Sabaa Tahir, which is the 4th and final Ember in the Ashes book. I can't remember what the series is called, but I I went into this not remembering much of what happened in book 3, but I did really enjoy it. I thought it was clever, and it wrapped up really well. I thought it had a really good conclusion and ending, and didn't feel overly cliched. The narrators do a great job for this series, and I really enjoyed the audiobooks. I always struggled to read. I struggled to read the first one physically. I think I DNF'd it, but reread it on audiobook and had a much greater time with it. And I gave the audiobook for Sky Beyond the Storm 4 stars, and I also went back and read A Thief Among the Trees, which is a little prequel graphic novel, and I really enjoyed that as well, which I also gave 4 stars, which follows Helena and Helene and Elias on a little adventure. Yeah, I give that 4 stars as well. And then the final novel I read for the month was These Violent Delights by Chloe Gong, which is a Romeo and Juliet retelling set in Shanghai in the 20s. And this was so good. So good. It almost made its way onto my best of for the year list, but I feel like it's just too fresh that I feel like it's, I don't know if it actually deserves to be there or if it's just like a strong 5-star, but I absolutely loved it. It's dramatic, it's angsty, it's gory. We're following basically the Romeo and Juliet thing between rival gangster teams, and gangs. And in the background of all this, there's a plague running the city where people are ripping out their own throats. The ending destroyed me, just saying, and it was so good. I had a great time reading this. I was absolutely obsessed the whole way through. I love all the characters. The character development is amazing. The plot, fun, the relationships, so interesting. Can't wait for book 2. It was so good. 5 stars. And then I proceeded to read a bunch of short stories published through Tor.com to finish up to my 31 and 31. So yeah, I did that. Let me just find the list. So first off we had, I'm checking these on my phone because I can't remember. I'm just going to say their names, their authors, and what I ended up rating them. So we had Placed into Abyss, or Mise en Abyss, by Rachel Swirsky, which I gave 4 stars. No Period by Harry Turtledove, which was super weird, and I gave that 3 stars. The Little Witch by M. Rickett, I gave 5 stars and really enjoyed that one. The Case of the Somewhat Mythic Sword by Garth Nix was really cool. I really enjoyed that one. I gave that one 4 stars. Flight by Claire Renwood, I gave 4 stars. The Ones Who Look by Catherine Duckett, I gave 4 stars. A lot of these were 4 stars. They were all pretty good. Beyond the Dragon's Gate by Yoonha Lee, I gave 4 stars. It was like a 3.5, but I rounded up because it did some really cool things. If You Take My Meaning by Charlie Jane Anders was a 3 stars. St. Valentine, St. Abigail, St. Bridget was a 4 stars by C.L. Polk. The Necessary Arthur by Garth Nix. Garth Nix has been publishing a lot of Arthurian short stories. It was also 4 stars. The Ashes of Around 23 Strangers was a 3 stars. That was by Jeremy Packet Burke. I found that a bit too weird for me. Two Truths and a Lie by Sarah Pinsker was a 4 stars. That one was cool. And Solution by Brian Evanson was a 3 stars. That one was also fucked up. So those were all the short stories I read at the end of the month. They're all from Tor.com, so they're really easy to find. They're all free if you're interested in looking up any of them. They're all sci-fi, fantasy kind of things. If you go check out my Goodreads, which I will try and remember to link below. I normally link them below, but I've been bad at doing it lately. You'll be able to see them in my 2020 list. And yeah, I recently read. Thank you so much for watching. That's my wrap up. I'll see you soon in another video. Hopefully January's wrap up will be less stressful to film, and my brain won't try and put it off. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you soon in another video. Bye.